Good evening, Tansei Anine. Welcome to APTN National News. I'm Daryl Stranger. It's a tragedy all too familiar on remote First Nations, a house fire ending in death. But a recent one that happened on a remote Cree Nation in Northern Ontario was brought to the floor of the House of Commons. Here's Annette Francis.
It's the first week for members of Parliament to return to work, and once again calls for help in another community rang out in the House of Commons.
The Wabano family of Peawanuck lost a beautiful child in a house fire this weekend, and we mourn with them and grieve with the 10 people who have been left homeless. In 2021, I wrote to this minister warning about the lack of fire protection for the Winis Cree. That warning was ignored, and now a child is dead. It is unconscionable that any community in this country is left without basic fire protection. So to the minister, simple question: will she stand today and promise to commit to build a fire hall and give the emergency resource support for the people of Peawanuck so they can live in safety?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I appreciate the question from the member. Mr. Speaker, my deepest condolences to the family and the entire community for the loss of a young girl due to a fire incident in Peawanuck. Minister Haidu spoke with Chief Hunter on Sunday to express her condolences and confirm that Indigenous services will be able to coordinate supports for this particular community. We will provide more updates as more information can be confirmed, and ISCO officials continue their discussions with the community. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
According to a 2021 Statistics Canada report, First Nations people living on reserve are 10 times more likely to die by fire. Often that can be attributed to lack of fire safety standards, firefighting services, and substandard housing. The Assembly of First Nations Regional Chief Cindy Woodhouse sends her condolences to the families affected. But she says it's time the federal government step up.
We've always told the Government of Canada that we need to close the infrastructure gap by 2030. This is so important. We need to make sure that there's more investments into housing and to make sure that people have adequate housing and to make sure that that communities are given the resources to develop fire protection.
According to Woodhouse, AFN created a First Nations fire protection strategy, but are still waiting for a response from the federal government. Annette Francis, APTN National News, Ottawa.
There were many emotional moments as residential school survivors gathered in Winnipeg this week. Around 1,700 people took part in Akwesasne Healing Center's conference. Residential, day school, and 60 Scoop survivors attended the conference, where there were opportunities for survivors to heal from the pain of their experience. The gathering featured workshops, one-on-one meetings with elders, and even reunions with other students. That was important for survivors Clarence Daniels and Verna Mason Sinclair, who said they mostly recalled loneliness from that time.
Being very lonely, being with a lot of other children that were very lonely too. They spoke different languages, and they weren't able to speak their language when they were there. They had to try to learn English right away fast.
I guess the biggest, hardest part for me was the loneliness, leaving home, and I didn't grow up learning our language, so I really can't say I lost my language there, but lost our traditional way of living,
Members of British Columbia's NDP government were in Ottawa on Wednesday for meetings with their federal counterparts. The BC delegation included Premier David Eby and 6 cabinet ministers. One of them is the Minister of Indigenous Relations and Reconciliation, Murray Rankin. At a morning press conference, Rankin said he will be meeting with Ministers Mark Miller and Patty Haidu.
Yes, we have a number of issues. We're close to some modern treaties in British Columbia. The Premier mentioned work we have recently done in Northeast BC with Treaty 8 to deal with the settlement of a lawsuit where a court found that there was a breach of that treaty through the cumulative impact of resource development. We'd love some federal support on that kind of initiative.
It was a historic moment this week as Peguis First Nation became the first First Nation in Manitoba to take control of their own child welfare system. Peguis law came into effect 1 year ago after notifying the federal government in 2021, but the province of Manitoba did not sign on at that time. The First Nation said its laws will allow members to receive services wherever they live in Canada. They are one of just over 24 First Nations that have applied to take over their child welfare system under federal legislation. The agreement includes a $313 million commitment from the federal government over 3 years.
We have prevented approximately 60 children from coming into care. We've signed customary care agreements, approximately 36. And, you know, as of last week, we haven't had any new court matters in the courts. So we are not taking our families, our children to court. We are sitting there with our elders and we are working and implementing our traditional ways and practices as we deliver services to our members.
And also in Alberta, the Louisville tribe today signed a 2-year agreement with the federal government to administer their own child welfare legislation. Now, the deal does not include the province of Alberta. A Native American actor known for his role in Dances with Wolves was taken into custody in Las Vegas on Tuesday. Nathan Chasing Horse, known for his role as Smiles a Lot in the Oscar-winning movie, is facing several serious charges, including sexual assault and trafficking. Tsuut'ina Nation police were also involved in the case. Las Vegas Metropolitan Police released this photo of Chasing Horse today. They say the 46-year-old is facing charges of sexual assault of a child less than 16 years old. Chasing Horse is also facing 2 counts of sex trafficking of an adult and child abuse neglect. In a press release, Tsuut'ina Nation Police said, "We are currently working with our policing partners here in Alberta, including the Calgary Police Service, as we believe there may be other victims that may want to come forward." And they also said, "We are further reviewing all related historical sexual assault files and working with a dedicated Crown prosecutor to ensure all victims have a voice." All right, we have to step aside for a quick break. More news when we come back. Welcome back to APTN National News. Hydro-Quebec says help is coming for the Mohawk community of Akwesasne. Residents have endured at least 3 extended power outages within the last month. Here's Lindsay Richardson with more.
We just had a little bit of a quick surge of a little power outage right here at CKON, and we want to make sure that everybody is okay out there, all right?
All's well over here at the Montour residence, where storm prep's been in full force inside the house.
We've cleaned our kitchen, washed our dishes in preparation for the storm. We've also are doing our laundry so that we have clean clothes. Should it last a couple days.
And outside it.
In preparation of the storm, we have to keep this area clean because we have access to the generator, and we also have access to the propane tank back here so that when they come to deliver, they have access.
It's an interesting situation out here on Akwesasne's border road. A tale of 2 power grids, American on one side and Canadian on the other, though both sides are technically Akwesasne lands.
These poles on the southern side of the road service southern Akwesasne and its national grid poles. The poles over here that service my home are Quebec Hydro poles, and they service the northern side of Akwesasne on this part of the territory.
Akwesasne Mohawk territory is one of unique circumstance. It's spread out over parts of New York State, Ontario, and Quebec, each section powered by different electrical companies, complicating the situation in the event of outages.
There are parts of our community where the power's out one side of the road up to 24 hours, and across the road, it's on, no problem at all.
Akwesasne Grand Chief Abram Benedict says outages in the Quebec or north portion of Akwesasne have been a problem for at least 2 decades. However, with the onslaught of extreme weather events in the last month,
What it seems to be occurring is that the outages are much more longer.
Barbara Montour received her hydro bill the day of our interview and tracked at least 3 extended outages in one billing cycle alone.
On December 23rd to 24th, we were off 26 hours. And again, on December 30th, we were off 15 hours. And then January 5th to 6th, 44 hours, almost 2 days we were off. And there's no acknowledgement on this bill.
It's more than an inconvenience. With the power goes internet, heating, and landline phone service. Cell service is spotty so close to the border. And while residents like the Montours do their best to prepare, not everyone can afford a costly backup generator.
I think we've grown complacent to the issue. It's a status quo. And it's 2023. We shouldn't be having utility issues like this.
Council has been doing their part to keep the community safe by opening up warming stations during long-term outages. They've also offered subsidies to members for spoiled food. But the longer the outages last, the more dangerous the situation becomes.
Some community members are using propane stoves, right? And stoves are meant, propane stoves and heaters are meant for short periods of time, not long periods of time. But when you're over the 24-hour mark, there's some real, concerns for safety of the community. We have followed up with Quebec Hydro. We have our council have sent a letter to the president and CEO asking for a meeting directly with her office or representatives to talk about these issues.
Hydro-Quebec told APTN News they're dealing with outage issues across the board. And though aware of the issues in Akwesasne, repairs and improvements have to happen in steps over the next few months. First, trees need to be trimmed to access the distribution line located in a swamp. Wooden poles need replacing. And when that's done, a hydro spokesperson says they'll be installing a remote control switch to reduce the duration of certain outages by transferring electricity from one line to another.
If you only knew how proud we are that we are able to be working along you.
The request to meet with Hydro's outgoing president and CEO, Sophie Brochu, before the end of her tenure in April is still up in the air. But council is undeterred.
We're pushing really hard on the long term, right? There needs to be significant investments in infrastructure here to make sure that these outages are not continuing to happen, and if they are, they're not as long.
Barbara, for her part, is unconvinced improvements will happen.
I personally do not see Quebec Hydro as part of the solution.
Mm-hmm. Why is that?
When you're part of the problem for half a century, you see it as normal. You don't see it as a problem. It's time that we become more proactive and take control of this issue rather than let the issue take control of us.
Hydro-Quebec says they'll set boots on the ground in the coming weeks. Lindsay Richardson, APTN National News, Akwesasne, Mohawk Territory.
Time for one final break. The latest from the Arctic Winter Games is next. Welcome back. It's time now for our photo of the day. As freezing cold weather covers much of the country, Effie Abakana shared this great shot showing what happens when you throw hot water into the frigid air. That's a great picture, Effie, and if you want to try that out, please be safe. If you want to be featured as our photo of the day, email your shots to share@aptn.ca, or you can tag us on Instagram. All right, now let's take a look at tomorrow's weather forecast. Beginning, as always, on the East Coast, -8 in St. John's and -1 in Halifax. -22 in Clear and Cartwright, and -24 in some snow in Happy Valley Goose Bay. -4 in Quebec City, and -2 in snow in Montreal. More snow and -2 for Toronto, and -8 in Sault Ste. Marie. -9 in Clear and Wawa, and -28 in Big Trail Lake. -30 in Clear and Churchill, and -26 in Clear and Thompson. -25 in Clear in Winnipeg, and -25 in Brandon. -24 in Yorkton, and -24 in Regina. Snow and -23 in Buffalo Narrows, and -28 in Uranium City. Making our way west, to snow and -21 in Fort Chipewyan, and snow and -21 in Fort McMurray. Snow and -9 in Edmonton, and -1 in Calgary. 7 degrees in Vancouver, and 7 in Campbell River. 8 degrees in Sandspit, and -9 with some snow in Dees Lake. -11 in Whitehorse, and -32 in Old Crow. Cold spell continues, -33 in Norman Wells, and -26 in Yellowknife. -35 in Fort McPherson, and -35 in Colville Lake. -31 in Cambridge Bay, and -37 in Chesterfield. minus 34 in Iqaluit, and minus 38 in Iqaluit. Well, there's a lot of exciting sports action at this year's Arctic Winter Games, but this year these games are also much more than sports. Here's Charlotte Moore-Jacobs with a look at today's events.
Thanks, Daryl. Well, it's day 3 of the Arctic Winter Games. I'm on location at McDonald Island in Fort McMurray. Yesterday, Team Alberta North had a very big day. Not only are they leading with 11 gold ulus, they've also taken overall medal count with 27 ulus. The Northwest Territories and Yukon are close behind, though, with 25 respected ulus each. While the competition was fierce yesterday, there was also moments of lightheartedness. There was quite a few cultural demonstrations with pop-up dancers from the Tetling Witchin dancers, as well as the Fort Chipewyan dancers. Now you can probably hear the drums behind me. That's because we're on location for the highly anticipated Dennehan Games. My colleague Chris Stewart will be filming the men's and the women's competition before going off to figure skating today. As part of the Games' cultural programming for Truth and Reconciliation, there's a number of events taking place today and tomorrow with the goal of educating the public on issues such as murdered and missing Indigenous women and girls, as well as the legacy of residential school. I'll be checking that out today and tomorrow. Now back to you in studio.
Thanks so much for that, Charlotte. And at the Games, a popular Arctic game is the 2-foot high kick, and the men's open had some serious competition. Athletes must jump using both feet and touch the target with both feet. Each round, the target gets higher. Alaska's Parker Kennick took home the gold ulu with an amazing kick of 98 inches, or a shade under 2 meters.
I really wasn't expecting it. I came here to learn from, the best of the best, and well, I did, and I'm really glad they helped me out here today. The audience, athletes, the officials, I thank them all. I thank all of the people that brought me here today, all my sponsors.
And 2 teams played in a highly anticipated hockey game in Fort McMurray. Alaska faced off against Nunavut in men's hockey. A packed house was mostly cheering for Nunavut. The game played close until Nunavut got up 4-1 late in the third. A late goal by Alaska kept the game within 2. But back-to-back penalties ended Alaska's hopes. Nunavut's Kobe Taniak scored on a breakaway to help in the victory.
I received my pass from Max, and I just started skating my hardest towards the net on a breakaway. Then I just sniped low glove.
How'd that feel?
It felt amazing.
Like all of Nunavut is watching this, right?
Yeah.
Tell me how that makes you feel.
It just makes the team want to win more.
And with the Arctic Winter Games back in action all this week after a 5-year hiatus, our reporter Charlotte Moore-Jacobs is reporting from Wood Buffalo, Alberta for the competition and takes us through the history of the beloved Games.
This was the symbol of a new era in the North.
Yellowknife 1970, the birthplace of the Arctic Winter Games, a celebration of diversity, attracting athletes and spectators from across the circumpolar North. A competition held every 2 years with the intention to build opportunity for sports in the North. Like John Flynn, a member of the Peguis First Nation. He first competed in hockey in AWG in Anchorage, Alaska in 1974, then coached athletes and most recently served as past president for the International Committee. The Games have a special place in Flynn's heart.
Well, the experience was amazing. It's hard to talk about all the benefits of the Arctic Winter Games with these young athletes that are coming. I mean, the excitement, uniforms, they get trained as a team to count on one another. And, they can go back to the communities and spread the word, basically, or say how much fun they had at it.
He says the Games also create a lasting legacy in the host community.
Part of the legacy, if there's money left over, then it's spent either on sports or a worthwhile project in the community. The cost is nothing compared to maybe setting a few kids on the right track with sports, and that just go to be, leaders in their communities.
The tournament is known for the enthusiastic demonstration of culture, with traditional activities such as Dene Games and Arctic sports. And with 20 sports in the competition, there's something for everyone. Patty Willingham's first AWG experience was for Arctic sport in 2010 in Grand Prairie. She's originally from the small community of Mayo, Yukon, and coaches the junior women's curling team. Recognizing her team doesn't have any athletes from outside the Whitehorse Hub, she believes moving forward, there's room to enhance and attract organized sports in remote communities.
I think we can definitely be more inclusive. There are curling rinks almost everywhere, provided that it always takes the person like a nice tech or a person of interest to build that.
Kyra McDonald says competitions like AWG build future leaders. She's an example, chosen as Team NT's flag bearer this year.
I'm so proud of where I come from, so that's the biggest deal for me. It's just the fact that I'm able to carry this flag, and for this whole territory is the biggest honor.
The decorated Inuvialuit and Dene hockey player appreciates how the games are organized, by Northerners, for Northerners, and hosted where Northerners live.
I mean, my whole community, I feel like, supports me, and mainly my family. My family's actually coming to watch these games. And I mean, I also even have cousins on the team, so I feel like I always have family around me, especially not even just watching, but competing with me.
From Flynn's 1974 experience to McDonald's debut on the ice almost 50 years later, it's no doubt these games leave a lifetime of memories. Charlotte Mort-Jacobs, APTN National News, Wood Buffalo, Treaty 8 Territory.
The wrongful conviction of Odelia and Narissa Cusance is our topic on In Focus this week. We spoke with advocates who are helping the sisters. Here's a look at our episode.
When someone has been convicted, wrongfully convicted, I think we should be working at warp speed to try and do the best we can to get them out at the earliest possible moment.
I reviewed all of the documents that I could get my hands on in terms of the investigation and the trial transcripts, and it became very clear to me very quickly that these women were innocent.
Some people might not know this, but you and your wife are actually sureties and have opened your home to Narissa if she gets bail. Why is that something that you guys want to do?
I did not want the court to use an excuse of her not having, Narissa, for example, not having any home to go to or any place to go if she was released.
That's all the documents right there.
That the Crown put in.
Oh, man.
And this is 462 pages.
Wow.
And what it is it's the Cusance sisters' corrections and bail records. And that's what the Crown put in to oppose them getting bail.
All right, that's all we have for you on this first show of February. For news anytime, you can visit our website, aptnnews.ca. I'm Daryl Stranger. Thank you for joining us, Miigwech, and have a great night.